what's up everyone? GameDad here, and we are back with part 5 of my current NES collection. So we're going to dive right in and check out what games are on the list. Rampage was released by Data East in 1998 and takes that classic arcade action of Rampage and puts it on the NES. It's super fun, you get to enjoy all your classic characters, and you just get to go destroying stuff. It's great. RoboCop was released by Data East in 1989, and in this game you get your classic side-scroller beat-em-up style game, but you're playing as the RoboCop. It was okay, it was a little buggy to me, kind of slow, but overall, I mean, it is a RoboCop game. Up next, we got another homebrew, Rock, Paper, Scissors, released by WRY Games in 2015, and this just brings classic Rock, Paper, Scissors to the NES. It works a lot like a Tetris Dr. Mario style game, but with classic Rock, Paper, Scissors rules. Rocket Ranger was released by Cinemaware in 1990, and in this game, you look through the map, you find places that you want to go, and then you send your character there. And whenever you get there, you get to do just classic NES gaming. That's really it. Up next, we got Roger Clemens' MVP Baseball, released by Sculptured Software in 1991, and this takes the typical NES baseball game and just gives you all that awesome detail where you can swap out your players, you can check your stats, various things, and then you just play the game. Up next, we have Russian Attack, released by Konami in 1987, and in this game, it's your typical early release NES side-scrolling action kind of game, so it has sort of a Contra feel, but is nowhere near as fun. The game is very primitive. And here we have Rygar, released by Tecmo in 1987, and in this action-adventure platformer kind of game, you get a lot of story. The graphics aren't super, like, crazy insane or anything like that for the NES, but overall, the game is actually a lot of fun to play. And here we have Scheherazade, released by Culture Brain in 1989, and this one is a top-down adventure game that kind of feels like it's a wannabe Zelda, but it's nowhere near as good. As you can see, there's only really a couple different colors for characters, and gameplay is kind of rough. Here we have Section Z, released by Capcom in 1987, and this is actually my very first experience with a side-scrolling shooter game. And this game is awesome. It really is a super fun shmup on the NES. Has everything you would expect. Here is Sesame Street 1, 2, 3, released by Rare in 1989, and this is obviously a more simplistic kids kind of game, but it has a bunch of little mini games built into it that teach you all about counting and things like that, so it's great for kids. Up next, we have Sesame Street ABC, released by Rare in 1989, and this particular copy of the game, I was having a lot of trouble getting it to reliably capture footage, so you'll actually see a little bit more of that in what I have in the next game. Now here is Sesame Street ABC and 1, 2, 3, released by Rare in 1991, and this one is actually a combo cart of the previous two games. So I happened to pick this up one day at a yard sale when I saw it, and it's kind of fun. I mean, it's a kid's game, and it takes you through the same kind of little mini games. And next we have Shatterhand, released by Natsume in 1991, and this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up style kind of shooter-esque game, but it has these awesome power-ups that allow you to actually become like the Shatterhand warrior. And here we have Shinobi, released by Tengen in 1989, and unfortunately this was another one that the Retron 5 was just having a lot of issues trying to get playback on, so I unfortunately do not have any game cap of this. Up next is Silent Service, released by Rare in 1989, and in this game you kind of navigate the oceans as a submarine. I don't know, maybe there's more detail in the actual game manual for this, but I don't have it, so this game was kind of hard to follow. Up next is The Simpsons, Bart vs. the Space Mutants, released by Imagineering in 1991, and this game is just classic Simpsons on the NES. I remember playing this a ton as a kid, and always having a blast just skating around, bopping aliens, and playing some Simpsons. Up next we have The Simpsons, Bart vs. the World, also released by Imagineering, and this time in 1991. And this one, it kind of gives you just a different story, and instead of aliens and stuff like that, it's more of, you know, homegrown issues that are going on. Here we have Skate or Die, released by Konami in 1988, and although this game is fun once you get a hang of the controls, That right there is a pretty big deterrent for when you first start playing this game. The controls are super obnoxious, especially in that half pipe. Now, here we have Skater Die 2, The Search for Double Trouble, released by EA in 1990. And this one, as you can see, is more of a side-scrolling version of a Skater Die game. Still pretty fun, but still has some really weird controls. Up next is Sky Shark, released by Software Creations in 1989, and yet again, my Retron 5 totally failed me on this. This video has a few of these games where the Retron was just not able to play these games effectively, and I don't really want to point a camera at a TV screen to show you footage. Up next is Slalom, released by Rare in 1987, and this is your typical slalom skiing game. It was actually pretty fun. It felt kind of like a car racing game, but they just made it a skier instead. So it was a very familiar mechanic, familiar obstacles and controls, and it was fun. Now here we have Snake's Revenge, released by Konami in 1990, and technically I guess this would be considered Metal Gear 2, because this was the second Metal Gear game on the NES. And this one I would say is actually more fun than the original, but graphically there really wasn't much of an improvement. Up next is Snow Brothers, released by Capcom in 1991, and this is one of the more rare titles in my collection. And I'm happy to say that this is a game that's actually kind of fun for being one of the rare ones. Normally they're kind of dumb games, but this one I have a lot of fun playing. And here we have Solomon's Key, released by Tecmo in 1987, and this is the last one in this video where I was having issues with game capture. For whatever reason, it would play on the NES, but it would not play on the Retron 5, so I unfortunately do not have any footage of it. Here we have Solstice, The Quest for the Staff of Demnos, released by Software Creations in 1990, and this is a fun action-adventure RPG kind of style game, but instead of seeing the whole world at once, you see the world through all these small screens. You go through the door, you get a new screen. Now we have Spot the Video Game, released by Virgin Mastertronic in 1990, and this one has kind of like a Connect 4 kind of vibe to it. I definitely prefer the Spot games on the Sega Genesis versus the NES. Up next is Spy Hunter, released by Sunsoft in 1987, and this one is a top-down driving game, but you also get weapons, so it's kind of like a vertical shooter, but I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but it is pretty fun to just drive around and blow stuff up. Up next is Spy vs. Spy, released by Kemco in 1988, and this game, I couldn't really tell what I was supposed to do. Maybe there's more info in the game manual, but again, I do not have the manual for this game, so I just kind of walked around trying to figure out what I could do. Up next is Star Trek 25th Anniversary, released by Interplay Entertainment in 1992, and this one takes you through some classic Star Trek scenarios, but kind of feels like more of like a Bridge Commander game, kind of like that newer one that came out recently that you can do in VR. Up next is Star Voyager, released by ASCII or ASCII in 1987, and in this game it kind of feels like a tank battalion sort of game, but it's set in space instead of being on land. I mean, it really operates just like a tank game, but you're shooting in space. Now here's another super fun one, and that is Star Wars, released by Beam Software in 1991. Now this kind of has like moon gravity to it when you're running and jumping and stuff, but overall I always have a ton of fun whenever I play this game. Up next we have Star Tropics, released by Nintendo in 1990, and in this game you have a top-down overworld action-adventure kind of game, and then you go into different villages and different areas, and you complete different tasks while in there. And here we have Super C, released by Konami in 1990, and this one really tried to be like kind of an upgraded Contra game, but honestly, I personally believe that there is no better Contra game than the very first one that came out on the NES. Up next is Super Dodgeball, released by Sony ImageSoft in 1989, and in this game you get just a classic game of dodgeball going on, but as you can see, this game really stretched the NES to its limits. You can tell by all the flashing characters that are happening because it's just having trouble loading all the sprites on the screen. And here is Super Glove Ball, released by Rare in 1990, and this is actually the only game I have that I can use my Power Glove with. I haven't actually tried it out yet to see how it plays, but I've heard that it is not great. And no collection would be complete without Super Mario Bros., released by Nintendo in 1985. There isn't really much I can say about this game that hasn't been said to death because it's been covered by everybody and their monkey. But hey, it's Mario, it's awesome, you gotta love it. Now this is just one of the variations that I have of this game. That's the Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt combo, released by Nintendo in 1988. And this just gives you the original Super Mario Bros. Game and then plus Duck Hunt. I actually have both of these games as separate carts, and then I have multi-carts. And the last game in this video is Super Mario Bros. 2, released by Nintendo in 1988. Now, this is not the Japanese one. This is the one where they took Doki Doki Panic from the Famicom and totally ripped it off and just put a Mario skin over it. Still a fun game, though. So there you have it, everyone. That is everything that is currently in part 5 of my NES collection. We are starting to bring this series to a close. We got one more video coming up next week, so be sure to let me know what you've thought of this series so far down in the comments below. Also, while you're down there, please be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, as well as that little notification bell so you get an alert every time I got a new video coming out. Now, as always, I'm GameDad. I thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you later.